If you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed, make sure and click the subscribe button, like, comment, let us know what you think about the episode. If there's a particular guest or topic that you'd like to hear about, let us know. We love to be able to take your feedback and then get them on to future episodes. Today, I'm going to be joined by Edge Products. Jacob's going to be chatting with me about some really cool products that they have, not just for newer diesel trucks, but also older ones. Their process for getting different tuning products emissions tested, either 49 or 50 state compliant, and the philosophy that Edge has as it pertains to adding more power to trucks. So I'm looking forward to chatting with him today. Before we get to it, I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors that helps make the Diesel Podcast possible. If you go to kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code 40, TDP 2024, you get up to 40% off MSRP. Kershaw Knives has a ton of different choices, whether you need something for EDC or hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house. They've got you covered with different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different opening mechanisms, different handle designs, and their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget. So we appreciate them offering that discount code just for Diesel Podcast listeners. Again, go to kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 40 TDP 2024. All right, let's get to today's podcast with Jacob from Edge Products and talking about tuning performance. Jacob, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. Looking forward to chatting with you today. It was cool talking about our history and background in diesel, and my familiarity with Edge goes all the way back to the beginning. I know you've been in the industry for a really, really long time, so I'm looking forward to being able to follow not just your journey, but then also Edge and where you guys have gone from the early days to being at the cutting edge now. So looking forward to learning and chatting with you. So welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate you reaching out. Patrick, I've been a long-time subscriber of the podcast. It's been good to follow along and try to get as many of the podcasts in as I can. So I'm glad I finally get an opportunity to be a part of it and kind of share our story and what to look for from Edge in the future. So,
yeah, it's going to be fun. Tell me a bit about your background and journey in with diesel trucks and being involved in having it it being the center point of a career for a really long time.
Sure. Yeah. So I started like most guys in this industry kind of started. I was a passionate hobbyist. You know, I drove a diesel pickup truck when I was in high school. So I've kind of been in on the diesel side of it, started learning how to tinker on it and upgrade it. You know, I had a 7.3 Power Stroke and just kind of cut my teeth on modifying it myself. And it was always a passion, something that I really enjoyed from an early start. You know, started modifying that truck, started hitting some of the diesel drag race scenes with that truck back when the DHRA was around. I mean, this would have been like 2005, 2006 when I got into it. And then it just kind of catapulted from there. I went to school at Utah State University and got a bachelor's degree in agricultural communications, which doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the diesel industry or diesel performance. But in my last semester there, I had an internship at a publishing company based out of Idaho Falls, Idaho, and they were just starting Diesel Tech magazine. And so I came in as an intern for that publication. They'd only released one issue of the magazine when I started there. So I was part of the team from issue 2, and then after my internship completed, I went back for my final semester of school to graduate, and they offered me a full-time job to start that summer. So I started working for them full-time as an assistant editor of that Diesel Tech magazine and was there for about 3 years. And then my career path just kind of shifted from being agricultural based to being diesel based at that point. So that was kind of where it kicked off. That would have been about 2008. And I've just been doing diesel ever since. So I was there for a couple of years. The economy kind of hit them hard and they laid off a bunch of employees, and I shifted and went to work at Wide Open Performance, which was a big name in the 7.3 Power Stroke market back then, building race motors and a bunch of race trucks. You know, they had the first 11-second Power Stroke, the first 10-second, 9-second, and then they even ran 8s with a 7.3 Power Stroke dragster. So kind of it was known real big in that Ford market. And then business kind of shifted, and I went to work as the head of sales and marketing at High Tech Turbo, based out of Salt Lake, Utah here, and then did a bunch of stuff for them for about 7 years. Was doing sales and marketing, and then started to learn some of the back side of it, some of the manufacturing side of it. Started to learn some of the machining processes, and got real in depth with that that side of the diesel market itself. And then after my time there, I came here to technically Holley, which owns Edge Products, and I've been here as the brand manager for Edge Products for about 5 years now. So just kind of able to change a passionate hobby into a career. Basically, I got lucky that I'm able to do what I enjoy, 40 hours a week, basically. So
yeah, and you've been able to see a whole bunch of different sides of diesel, from the writing, the magazine side, through turbos, through just all these different aspects, the performance side. And that's, I guess you'd have a really clear view of the entire sort of like what enthusiasts want, what they want to do, what is important to them.
yeah,
And I think that's really a key. Is it's shifted over the years. Like I took the roundabout way with this. I wish I was lucky enough right out of college to have been able to jump into it. But I just started, a friend got a diesel truck, I put some parts on it, and I started to see what it would do. And then I started to subscribe to magazines. I started to watch videos, and I would watch like trucks on Spike TV, like early Saturday mornings or whenever it would come on. And it just, I knew I loved it, and if I could just talk about it or be around it all the time, it was like heaven, just to be able to be around all different kinds of trucks. And I think that's something that a lot of enthusiasts they'll ask and say, hey, can you talk to somebody about how do I get into this, or how do I find my place in it? Because like for me, I'm not a mechanic. I'd mess it all up. But I love to talk about the parts. I love to learn how they work. I love to learn how everything kind of fits together. So there's always a place. That's a really interesting journey that you have.
Yeah. So, I mean, it definitely, I mean, I can go back through those years and kind of use a little bit from every portion of it to kind of hone in what my expertise has been, and kind of continue to increase my knowledge of the industry or the products or whatever it might be. Through all that time, I continued freelancing for Diesel World magazine. So I did freelance editorial for them for about 14 years. So, I mean, that was really nice because it allowed me to keep my contacts with just about anybody in the industry, whether they're from the manufacturer side, the reseller side, and then, like you said, the enthusiasts being out at the event, because at the end of the day, that's what I am. I'm an enthusiast myself, and I do the work on my own trucks, and that's part of, that's what I enjoy most, is building my own project. And as I've gone through a lot of trucks through the years, and I get to that point where the truck's done, or considered what I would, it's what I would consider as done. And at that point, I'm bored with it, and I want to sell it and start a new one. You know what I mean? So it drives my wife absolutely crazy, but I've been flipping trucks every couple of years just for that purpose. I enjoy the journey part of it, not the completed part of it. So
I wanted to ask you a little more about that. You talked about starting with a 7.3. How has your journey as an enthusiast, have you stuck like with Ford trucks, or did you branch off into Ram or GM at all, or what's that been like?
Yeah, no, I've branched. I mean, definitely the 7.3s is obviously where I got my start. I had a little bit of a stint where I had some 6.4 trucks when the 6.4s were new, back before we realized what ticking time bomb those became. But yeah, I mean, I built quite a few 7.3s. I had a 7.3 that made over 1,000 horsepower on the chassis dyno in like 2009. We built that truck just for the chassis dyno to try and set records, and that truck made like 480 horsepower on fuel, and then we sprayed it to 1,018. Wow. So been down that road, built motors, concrete blocks, big nitrous solenoids and wastegates on the exhaust manifolds to try and dump off all that drive pressure. And then, I ventured into the 6.4 market. We started tinkering with those. I had one of the very first 6.4s that had a single turbocharger on it. We converted it from the factory turbos to an S300, and that would have been 2009, 2010, sometime around there. So when the trucks were brand new. So I had two different 6.4s, and then I did venture out into the GM market. I had an LB7 Duramax, did a full build motor in that one, had a set of compound turbos on it, larger injectors, did the full built trans, went down that road. That truck was my daily driver for about 5 years, and ended up making about just over 780 horse to the tire. And I still towed my fifth wheel camper on the weekends when I'd turn it down. And then I ventured into the LML market. I had a 2012 LML for a couple of years. Really enjoyed that truck, but the Ford has definitely always been my go-to. I mean, it's the one I feel most comfortable with. the 7.3 is obviously the one that I had the most knowledge with and do to this day. So I kind of went back to my Ford roots, and I've been flipping 7.3s the last few years. The OBS market has gotten really popular.
Yeah.
So I was trying to find good, clean, low mileage OBSs and kind of clean them up and restore them. And so I flipped a couple of OBS trucks in the last couple of years. And currently I'm driving a 2017 Ford F350 now. So Ford will always be my baby. But I did venture out into the Duramax space for a little bit.
So you've seen it from the performance side, and I'd say that's kind of what pulled me in at the start. And it seems like with the podcast for the first, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years, that was a lot of what people wanted to hear about. They wanted to hear about going fast, kind of the ultimate, and you'll remember this from like the magazine days. It's the 1,000 horsepower daily driver. Everybody wanted that way back then. But I've noticed a shift the last 2 or 3, and it's been people asking or saying, hey, these newer trucks, they make enough power, but I just want a little bit more. I don't necessarily want to jump into built transmission and head studs, valve spring, going all into it that way, but I just want a little bit more. So what has it been like for you specifically with Edge and starting out on the performance side, the concrete block, trucks, the compound turbo trucks, and then I think the market has really been drifting towards, I just want a little bit more power. I want convenience. I want technology, and kind of blending those two.
For sure. I mean, it's the in my 20 years in this industry that it has changed drastically from being this high performance, the enthusiasts and, every bit of discretionary income they had was going into their trucks. You know what I mean? Economy changes and all sorts of things change. And now, like you mentioned, today's trucks, 10 years ago, the number one request for Edge products was, my truck needs a little more power. I want to be able to tow my fifth wheel trailer. I want to be able to go over the grade at 75 miles an hour in overdrive, and this truck just won't do it right now. And so that was the big push, was tuning that help do that, and make a better driving experience, more power and torque for towing, et cetera, et cetera. But now the OEMs are producing such a great platform. The new Ford trucks are making well over 400 horsepower to the tire off the showroom floor. You know what I mean? So the industry and the requirements that the consumers are putting on the aftermarket is definitely changing. We, in this specific role, we don't have as many people requesting more power as the number one thing. You know what I mean? That's not the big thing. They have other things that come up with their truck, little annoyances or features that they'd like to be able to add or features they'd like to be able to control. And depending on the platform, some of those feature requests are more important than added power. So we've definitely had to kind of shift our way of thinking and making sure that we produce a product that the consumers are going to want and need. It's definitely different than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Yeah. Drastically different than it was 15 years ago.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was like those early days, somebody would make a kit or something and you'd see it on a forum and, you'd call them up, order it. It was, good to go. But I think everything with emissions and testing and being able to sell it in 49 or 50 states has definitely made it, I think, take a little bit longer to get those products to market. Sure. But it's like the early days. Like, I think one of the first times I came across Edge was I had a friend with a second gen VP truck, and it was put the Edge juice with attitude on it. It was like crazy power you could get out of that second gen with just doing that. And I think of like a 2024 Ram or a Power Stroke or a Duramax, an L5P. There is so much power and technology that's built into them. People used to spend 10 grand plus to be able to have 500 horsepower, 1,200 foot-pounds of torque. Whereas now you don't need that much to do it. But as far as all this technology that's in these newer trucks, and you'd mentioned kind of the annoyances that owners might have, is like, what are some common things you hear about new trucks that people want to change where you guys are able to step in and help them?
Yeah. So, I mean, on the new stuff, I mean, the most common concern that guys have is the pedal lag, the built-in throttle delay. That's an electronic pedal nowadays. It's not like we're pulling on a throttle cable or anything like that anymore. And the OEMs have placed some lag in that pedal field. So we get a lot of requests to improve that throttle response. With all of the latest emissions control equipment that's on these vehicles, a lot of guys want to be able to watch what's going on in that truck. So, our Insight CTS3, which has been our flagship product for, about 5 years on the CTS3 platform. And we had 5 years on our CTS2 platform and 5 years on the original CTS Insight. So that's been the flagship product for this brand for going on 15 years now. And that's still the case. And it's still the case for guys with brand new pickup trucks. The brand new trucks give you more data than you've ever had access to in older model years, but there's still a lot of stuff that the OEs don't give you access to. So there's a lot of demand for guys that want to be able to watch their regen status. They want to see when the DPF status is turning on or off. They want to be able to see their soot accumulation, see how much it increases or how much it changes from one tank of fuel to the next. Some of those diagnostics features, and our Insight CTS3 gives most guys the ability to perform a manual regen should they ever have to. We can check injector balance rates, and read and clear your diagnostic trouble code. So, that Insight monitor gives us a lot of control and visibility to what's going on in the truck that a lot of guys are asking for. And then we've got, our new EasyX product line that's been extremely popular in the late model Ram Cummins market, the 2019 to 2024 trucks. That's a simple plug and play module that'll add 55 to 65 horsepower, depending on if you've got a standard output or a high output truck. So it's not major power increases, but it's enough to know that it's there. And when you're towing a trailer, all that added torque is where you want it to be and expect it to be, So it's not like it's going to set the world on fire with wide open throttle acceleration over a stock truck, but there's enough of a bump in power and torque that, that the truck runs a little bit better. It's not quite as lethargic because we're taking that throttle response and allowing you to adjust it to the pedal feel that you prefer. And then there's a bunch of features in a smartphone app that you can adjust your or calibrate your tire size or change your TPMS sensor settings. You can set it so that it remembers your exhaust brake and your tow haul modes when you shut the truck off at the fuel stop and you're refilling, towing your trailer across the country. When you shut the truck off and restart the truck, it'll remember that you had the exhaust brake on when you stop. It's just little things like that make the driving experience a little bit better, come full circle. And that's been a huge mover for us on the Ram platform. A lot of guys are like, man, this fixed everything I hated about this brand new truck. Everything that annoyed me is fixed, and I didn't have to spend a fortune. And because it's a plug-in module, we're not flashing the ECM in any way. So if they still have a warranty, they can remove the product in a matter of minutes, take it in for their dealer warranty work. And when they get home, they put the device back in and down the road they go. You know what I mean? So, making sure we offer products that are emissions compliant, emissions friendly, easy to install, and give those users that feature control and adjustability on their end so that they can kind of customize the ride. That's kind of been key for us the last few years.
Yeah, and that's really where the bulk of the market is, and it took me a really long time to be able to figure that out because I started in with, well, what's full throttle performance like? What is my quarter mile time? What type of power am I making on the dyno? But 99% of truck owners don't care about that. It's the usable power day to day. They're using it for work. They're towing. They're taking. They're going on vacation, something like that, towing a trailer or a fifth wheel, like you mentioned. And they want those creature comforts. And I think that's been a major shift in the aftermarket that diesel enthusiasts can pick from. Is you don't have to just focus on performance, big turbos, compounds, maybe doing an engine build. There's so many, I think, just daily creature comforts that you can have and take advantage of. And you still have all this, tons of factory power. But if you want a little bit more, like you mentioned, 55, 65 horsepower, it's something you could feel. But you're not having to dig into, well, I better start shopping for built transmissions and price one of those out for $10,000 plus or whatever they're going for now.
Right. And that's been a big shift that we see on our end is, a warranty is as important as anything anymore these days. You're spending $100,000 on this truck. And, some of these guys are putting 7, 8, 10-year loans on these things. You know what I mean? The last thing you want to do is walk away from that warranty. So, we've had to shift that and try and make products that can be friendly and understand that that's an important thing for these guys in these brand new trucks. We still offer a bunch of our different flash tuning modules for for the older generation trucks, the newer generation trucks. You brought up the VP44 market. We relaunched our comp module last summer for the VP44 market. Edge had been producing the comp module since 2001, and we just discontinued that last summer. So that was on the market for 20 years, basically unchanged through that time. Got to the point where that product was no longer producible. We could not get the parts that went into making the computer boards on the inside of that module. And it was, do we discontinue it and just walk away from that market? Or is there enough here to justify reinvesting our engineering efforts and making something new? So we crunched the numbers and looked at what our VP44 sales market had done the last year or two, and determined that we still had enough share in that market to justify spending some time developing something new. So we developed our Comp 2.0. That's now smartphone app driven, makes it a little easier, for the end user. It's newer technology, but it's still for a 20 plus year old platform. And, we kind of anticipated that new module, when it was released, would kind of we assumed it was going to kill off some of our juice with attitude sales to the VP44 market. We thought maybe it would kill off some of our sales with our EZ module. That's just the simple plug and play module for those trucks. We were anticipating seeing our sales start to decline on the other products we offered for the VP44. And what we found is it actually just reinvigorated that market. I don't know if it just brought Edge back to the talking to the table with all of the owners in that truck, or if the added marketing behind comp just let people know that, hey, we're still in this market. We still want to support this platform. The second gen is still important to us. But launching that new device, we actually saw an increase across the board with all of our VP44 sales. So, it's been really good. And it's nice to see that the owners of those trucks are still looking, that the aftermarket support is still needed for those trucks, or still wanted for those trucks. And so then we go back to the drawing boards and see, what else can we make? What else can we re-engineer? What else can we do better than we did 10 years ago to support the owners of all of these trucks today? You know what I mean? There's still a lot of 7.3s on the road. There's still a lot of VP44s on the road. What can we do to better support those truck owners today?
Common question we get from you guys a lot is, hey, I need a diesel engine. I either, I can't wait this long to get one, or normal place I get stuff from it just takes too long, or they don't have the parts in it that I need. Maybe my truck's not stock, or I tow heavy with it. I don't want to go back with just a stock engine. DFC Diesel is a sponsor of the podcast. We worked with them, hand in hand on doing episodes, answering technical questions. They have a complete lineup of Cummins, Duramax, and Power Stroke remanufactured engines that are set to a standard of ISO 9001 2015 standards, which is a huge deal in the aftermarket. And there's certain levels of quality testing, validation that are required for that. So when you get one of those engines, the type of quality that's built behind it, with an industry-leading warranty that's really comprehensive. And the other thing with that is, sometimes the options that are out there, it's a basic OEM engine. You want a little bit more. You don't want to have the same failure again. So there's a bunch of different series of engines that they have, from core, street, tow haul, and also the Speed of Air series, which we've covered on the podcast before. There's a lot of really cool benefits to it. And if you have questions about that, reach out to them. If you don't know the type of engine that you're looking for, if you go to dfcdiesel.com, there's a ton of info there. You can send an email, or you can reach out to them. Also, they're working with Speed of Air pistons, which it's the only piston that pays for itself. And there's a lot of really cool technology behind it. So you can add that into your build and be able to get better fuel economy, increase power, increase torque, and better engine life out of it. Some of the most common engine applications or series of engines that they have with that lead time, a lot of them are in stock, or they have really short lead times. So you can check your favorite retailer, or go to dfcdiesel.com, check them out, see what's in stock, see what you can get. If you have questions, maybe you want to do something that's outside of the normal series of engines, they have tons of choices for rods, cranks, pistons, valve train upgrades, tons of different things. So if you're in the market, definitely make sure and head on over and check them out. Well, there's been a huge resurgence in some of those older trucks, and it's probably being driven by a few different things. Maybe it's because they're less complex, maybe the price of them compared to new, the reliability long term. It's really cool to see this new technology, and I'm sure you guys did it with the Comp 2.0 box, but the things you guys were working on for new Power Strokes and Duramax trucks and 6.7 Cummins, able to take some of that knowledge and experience and apply it towards something that like last came off the assembly line in 2002, or like a 2003 7.3, something like that. So you can run it with a smartphone app, and you're driving a 2001 VP truck. It's able to blend the two really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got I think we have a little bit of a leg up on some of the competition because some of our engineers have been here since the beginning. Edge started in 1999 in the VP44 market. That's where they really started to get big, was the module they released for the VP44. And they kind of expanded from there. And then they got their new module for the LB7 Duramax when that truck came out in 2001. And it started to get some hold in the market. And they released their Juice with Attitude line that was for the Duramax and the 6-liter Power Strokes back then, and those were the products that really put Edge on the map. And they had the Evolution handheld tuner for the 7.3 market, flash tuner, those kind of really propelled Edge into the future and into performance tuning segment of this industry. And luckily for us, a lot of the engineers that were developing that product then are still here. And so they're able to use their 20 years worth of knowledge and R&D and trial and error. And then they've also been able to expand their knowledge of the newest technologies and kind of build on what they knew 10 years ago and how they can make it better today, so we can lean on some of that expertise here and making sure that we're producing a product that the consumer could use, that's something that the consumer wants. Our big thing is just making sure we tell that story and market it so that we can reach as many consumers as we possibly can, obviously. So
I wanted to talk a little bit about the tuning side of it, because I tend to just kind of step back and look at how that went. And I think back to the Juice with Attitude or the Comp Box on the VP trucks. And then I think of kind of some box tuners where you could maybe adjust a few settings kind of in the early Common Rail days. And then it exploded with custom tuning across everything. 5.9s and Duramaxes and some of the other platforms. And then I think because of emissions enforcement and different things that were going on, a lot of them don't do it anymore. And there's just a handful that are in the custom tuning market. But one of the things that I hear from truck owners is they're the guy who just wants 60, 80, maybe 100 horsepower more, maybe 100 horsepower. And they look out there at the pricing and they think, do I want to spend $2,000+ on this and send in my ECM or do these different things? Because I do have a warranty on this truck. I don't know if I want to go that far. And I think for a while there, they would just not do anything. They do lift wheels, tires, things like that, maybe change, re-gear it, but they weren't going into the tuning side. From your perspective, how has that evolved to, and where is it now, as far as the electronic performance that you can get on these newer trucks?
Yes, I mean, like you said, it's definitely taken a shift through the years. Edge was offering a bunch of different flash tuning back in the late 2000s, and we're big in this space. And in 2011, when the EPA started to hit everybody and get harder on DPF deletes and emissions defeat, all that kind of stuff, Edge took the stance in 2011 that moving forward, everything that comes out these doors is going to be emissions compliant, and we're going to go above and beyond what's required of the industry to make sure that we're staying compliant and that we're offering products and we're trying to do as best we can to educate the consumer as to why we want to stay compliant. What are the possibilities? What's the future of being on the compliance side? What's the performance potential? Just because it's carb compliant doesn't mean that it doesn't run as good. There's a lot of things that go into it. And here we are, 12, 13, 14 years later, and we're still pushing that envelope. So I think we have a distinct advantage that we've been doing the emissions compliant side of the tuning industry as long or longer than anybody. And so we've got an in-house emissions cell that uses the same emissions analyzer that SEMA Garage or CARB uses, so that anything that goes out our doors, we test ahead of time and make sure that our calibrations are going to be CARB compliant and that we release our products 49 state compliant. And then we go down the path of making sure we can get a CARB EO on that product. Obviously, there's a little bit of a bottleneck at CARB, so some of those that documentation takes a lot longer than we anticipate, or much longer than we want it to. But we release the product with our in-house testing, knowing that when that application gets across their desk, they're going to sign it. We can move on. But the market has definitely changed. You brought up custom tuning, and that has been like the Achilles heel for Edge for over a decade, because Edge has always offered that preloaded box tuner as that's where we've been put in the industry. The thing that gets overlooked is how well some of those tunes run in some of those trucks. And when we test our tuning with some of the competitors, even the custom tuning competitors, some of our calibrations will actually put down more power or torque or offer better drivability than that custom tune. It's been kind of a misconception that custom tuning means that it's going to be specific to your truck, special to your truck. But when it comes down to it, a truck with stock injectors and a stock turbo and a stock transmission, the limitation is the same. And, say for example, a 2004 LB7 Duramax, the limitation is always the stock Allison transmission. You can only make so much power before that transmission will slip into neutral and overdrive. You know what I mean? So knowing that, our box tuner is right on the cusp of where that stock transmission is going to cry for mercy. You know what I mean? And It's going to be the same for that custom tuner. He can't give you any more power or torque than we can because your trans is going to slip. There is an advantage with custom tuning when you get into the more modified applications. If you're doing modified turbochargers, modified injectors, there's absolutely something to be said to custom tuning and making sure you get some calibrations that are specific to the modifications that you've made. But in a stock application, our preloaded tuning works just as well, and in some vehicles better than a custom tuning platform would. Knowing that, we obviously offer our preloaded devices, and we go after getting our emissions EOs so that they can be 50 state compliant. But because the custom tune market does exist, in 2025, we're actually making an initiative to be a little bit more prevalent in that space. And like you said, some of the current products that are offered in that custom tuning space aren't as feasible for a lot of owners because of the price point. The cost to enter that market in some applications is really, really high. The L5P market, it can be quite expensive to get custom tuning into the vehicle because of the hardware that's currently on the market. Yeah. So, we've just announced that we're expanding into the custom tuning market by using our hardware. We aren't actually doing the calibrations, but we are working with approved third-party resellers or third-party calibrations that go through a training course with Edge. We give them our tuning suite, and then they would be able to use their custom calibrations and flash that calibration into the vehicle using the CTS3 product. So if you already own an Insight CTS3, it can be upgraded with a custom tune license, and then you can just call the custom tuner of your choice as long as they're on our approved list, and you would be able to get custom tunes from them and just flash them into the truck with the Insight that you already have on the dash. So we're eliminating that need to purchase other hardware. A couple of $100 for the hardware, a couple of $100 for the credits, whatever it might be, depending on the application. And you'd be able to use the monitor that you have on the dash to just flash those tunes into the truck. So we're going to venture into that custom tuning space just by delivering a piece of hardware that the custom tuners can use, and then hopefully eliminate some of that cost that the end user sees and make that cost to enter the market a little bit lower, which hopefully will expand the ability for more and more guys to jump into the space.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what's so important with it from an enthusiast standpoint is if you want to upgrade your truck or get more performance, and I know performance, every truck owner has to define what that is. For some people, 60 horsepower Absolutely. Is performance. For someone else, it's 1,500 horsepower or it's right. 800, whatever right. it might be. But I think like the word custom tuning has just been used kind of as a blanket phrase. And when some people dig into it, it's just not financially worth going down that road. They would fit more into, I want better throttle response. I want to see when my regen is happening or what the soot load is, or I want to change my TPMS and still want that 60 horsepower. But, like that LB7 you mentioned, maybe he's got a billet transmission. Maybe he's got billet rods, did head work, all these different things, running compound turbos. Yeah, he's definitely going to need custom tuning to take advantage of those hard parts. So I love the embrace of both sides of the electronic performance aspect to it.
Yeah, Edge Products has always tried to cater to, I like to call it the meat and potatoes of the market. You know what I mean? There are a lot more guys that are just towing their boat on the weekends versus guys that are rebuilding long blocks and going to the track on Saturday nights. You know what I mean? So we try and cater to the core of that market. Who the more vehicles we can get the product into, that's where the industry thrives. They might not be the guys that are the most vocal on Facebook groups. They're not the most vocal on forums. You know what I mean? But there are a lot more of those guys out there than the ones that are vocal on the Facebook groups. So we definitely try and offer a product line that can meet every consumer's demands, whether it's a good, better, best situation, price point, whatever it is that drives that consumer, we try and offer something for everybody. We've got, I mentioned that EasyX module for that Ram Cummins. That's the plug and play and does a bunch of features with an app and adds some power. We also offer our Pulsar LT line for the GM applications that has a bunch of features in it to control. You can perform a manual regen, adjust your tire size, your TPMS, throttle response, but it's not a performance module. It doesn't add any power whatsoever. So it's that basement level. I want to be able to make these changes, but I don't want to mess it's got enough power. I don't care about power or torque or whatever it is. So we have, we try and have different tiers that can fit every specific consumer's needs. And then, like I mentioned, being able to branch out into this custom tuning space will help us better serve that specific calibrator and that end user and offer a less expensive mode of getting calibrations into their truck. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also really important, the focus that you guys have on the testing of the product for 49 states, but then also preparing it for carb testing. One of the most eye-opening moments I had was probably 3 or 4 years ago. I was looking to see where most diesel podcast listeners are. So in my head, I'm thinking Texas, Ohio, Indiana, the Southeast, the Midwest. Yeah. And I look and I see it's in California, and it's like 2-1. And at that time, there weren't a lot of products, there weren't a lot of companies that were trying to get whatever product they made through that carb process, which I know is tedious. It can take a while, but there's so many diesel truck owners that are out there that do own newer trucks, and they do have a system they have to go through to have emissions testing and visuals, and they need to have this EO number to have it on their truck and operate it. And I just really appreciate that aspect to it, because I think of the people out there with trucks, and you can't get this part, or you can't get whatever it might be because it doesn't have an EO number. So I commend you guys for taking that stance, which it sounds like you guys did a really long time ago, and it was before it was popular.
Yeah, definitely, it was before it was popular, and it's been an advantage and a disadvantage. You know what I mean? It's meant that Edge has had to play on a playing field that wasn't even.
Yeah,
there's still a lot of the emissions defeat stuff out there, and so a lot of our market share, our ability to service some customers just isn't there because of our emissions compliance stance. And it is what it is at this point. You know what I mean? We would much rather help the industry grow by pushing the emissions compliance standard. We're working with some other companies within the diesel space so that we can use our in-house emissions testing to maybe help some of their brands and some of their product offerings expand into that emissions compliant. We're working with a couple of companies that are outside of the tuning space but are in diesel, so that they can offer their products with the tuning to go with it that will be emissions compliant. So we're working, we're partnering up with a couple of different companies in 2025 to release products that should better that emissions performance stance across the board. And to those consumers that you've got listening that are in California, we've got across our tuning brands, which would be Edge, Super Chips, and Diablo Sport. We have, I think it's like 75 different tuner part numbers that add power and allow you to modify your truck or car that are EO compliant in California. So, that's definitely somewhere that we find importance, and we've invested a lot of money in being able to support that. And it's really, at this point, it's really just about telling the story that just because it's carb compliant doesn't mean it's not as good. That's a story that is really hard to tell. But we can compete with most of the other devices out there, that the box tuners, the pre-programmed tuners, and even some of the custom calibrators. There's a misconception that some of those custom calibrators, they offer DPF delete or DPF defeat tuning, but they also offer emissions on tuning, but just because it says emissions on doesn't necessarily mean that it's emissions compliant. And one of those guys that's taking their DPF delete tune and just turning the DPF sensors back on, you'll find that driving that truck, it's not a great driving experience. Your soot is going to go through the roof. Your EGR usage goes through the roof. DPFs plug up, and you can run into issues down the road. So, our calibrators here at Edge have been tuning emissions compliant trucks for over 10 years. And it took a lot of time and testing to make sure we produced calibrations that made power, but didn't hurt the rest of that emissions equipment. You know what I mean? It took a lot of time to learn how to tune these trucks correctly and get the most we can out of them efficiently. So it's been an interesting journey, but it's been good.
That's a really huge part, which I can't remember what specific episode. It might have been when I was talking with an emissions lawyer about getting CARB or 49 state offering products. And I think it was him. And he had said you have to have reasonable basis to show through data that this product, whatever it is, does not change the parameters of what that particular truck has. And I think that's become even more important in 2024 heading into 2025. Is like, as a consumer, say if I'm going to run something that is emissions compliant, it's 49 or 50 state compliant, I want to know, or I want to have the backing or confidence in the product that I'm purchasing, that I'm not going to destroy my DPF because I don't want to spend $4,000 to $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 or wait 3 to 4 months for it. So I want that name and that history there. I want to know that it exists. So I think qualifying or asking yourself, if you're a truck owner, is it emissions compliant? How is it? What process have they gone through? And I think when you mentioned the in-house testing you guys are doing, you're validating all those. So whichever sort of certification it has, it's within those parameters. So I can put it on my truck. I have confidence in that versus maybe I just find something randomly on the internet for tuning and it just says emissions compliant because the DPF's on the truck. Well, it might not be. And I think companies have learned and are learning in that space. You have to prove it. And it does cost money and resources to be able to prove it. But I would want that as a truck owner if I'm going to run that kind of tuning.
Yeah. And like you said, it's extremely expensive. The equipment, the dyno cell that we put in, it's been 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now that we put this new emission cell in, climate controlled and all of the top of the line testing equipment. And, we test every single product before we release it. Every calibration gets run through that machine. And it's not cheap to buy the gases that are needed to run the analyzers and all that kind of stuff. It could be a couple of $1,000s just to test one calibration. And that's one calibration in a device that has 4 calibrations. You know what I mean? And if it doesn't pass, then it goes back to the calibrator and they make the changes to make sure that it does what it needs to pass. And we run that test again for another couple of $1,000s on the test. You know what I mean? And from our viewpoint, like you said, to be able to have that reasonable basis, we have the documentation, when we release the product. And then, we want our resellers that are out in that space, anybody that's selling Edge products, we want them to have the confidence in us that we'll go to bat for them. If they're selling our product and somebody knocks on the door and wants to know why and how, and is it legal or is it not legal and all of that stuff, we want our Edge dealers to have the confidence in Edge products that we'll go to bat for them, that we have the documentation to prove it. We have all of the data that anybody could ask for, and we're willing to walk that line. And it takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of money. And that's just a stance that we've taken as a brand, as a company as a whole. And we want to continue putting our best foot forward and supporting the industry with that. So
I think the collaboration is really interesting to me as well. And I know you'll remember like the early days, and you think of diesel companies and collaboration really didn't happen. It was kind of like Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Auburn, Texas, OU, Notre Dame, USC. It was very kind of sectionalized and you didn't really collaborate. And I've seen that change, and I think it's had to, and it's good for truck owners when that happens and you're able to share resources, knowledge, data, different things like that to be able to, potentially offer 49 or 50 state compliant turbos or injectors or injection pumps or whatever it might be. It makes a stronger aftermarket for diesel.
I agree. And I think I use a really cheesy analogy, that it's not necessarily about making my piece of the pie bigger or taking someone else's piece of the pie. I want make the overall size of the pizza bigger. You know what I mean? I want to go from a large to an extra large. You know, we've only got so many people, that consumers that we can reach inside our space. And so it's not necessarily about taking that piece from somebody else as much as I want to. I want more market share in any place I can get it. But as a whole, we've also found that, like you said, in working with those collaborations and making sure that we can help anybody else in the industry better their business, it betters our business too. You know, so whatever we can do to make that size of that pizza bigger is going to be beneficial to the other manufacturers, the consumer especially. You know, if we can, just like this plan to move into the custom tuning space with our hardware, with our CTS3 hardware, with the custom calibrator. That custom calibrator has long been a competitor for Edge products. They're trying to sell tuning, the same guy we're trying to sell tuning to. But by reducing the cost to entry for a consumer, you know, maybe that's one guy that will enter the market that wouldn't have. You know what I mean? And that's to the benefit of everybody, including the consumer. So
yeah, that's really the key. That's how it all starts. There's so many people that I think back that I knew that started with some sort of electronic performance, and within 2 or 3 years they had a built engine coming back to them, and were shipping their transmission across the country for all billet shafts and a high stall converter. And it started everything. And I've been really excited to see in the new landscape of emissions on trucks, the aftermarket catching up to it, because it didn't for a long time. And I think that was because of the cost and the infrastructure that's needed to do it. But now we're seeing turbos, we're seeing injectors, we're seeing injection pumps, we're seeing the tuning that you're talking about, to where that really nice driving street truck could be in the future. Or maybe it's already here, where you can have that, which is what I think the diesel aftermarket was built on in the early mid 2000s, 2010s.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely, it's shifted, you know, and through all of the different changes in the industry, you've seen a lot of companies come and go. And you've mentioned that, you know, some of those calibrators don't exist anymore. Some of the aftermarket performance companies they aren't around anymore. And so it's, you know, every business has to kind of shift and make sure that they're offering products that the consumer needs or wants, you know what I mean? And in this industry, specific to Edge products, you know, we don't necessarily offer products that people need. You know, these are things that are on people's want lists. And when the economy is changed, like the economy we're in now, and the inflation, and nobody has discretionary income, and everything is harder to come by, and you're worried about making mortgage payments and putting food on the table and all those things, you know, the list of wants gets longer, but the money to buy that stuff gets shorter, you know. And so it's all about making sure that you're offering the best product you can, the most cost-effective entry-level price, you know, and try and fill the niche needs of different consumers, and make sure that, you know, you've got the technology, the support, you know, that's a big one, the tech support after the fact, customer support, the product offering, you know, make sure that you can check all those boxes to stay competitive in a tough market. You know, the last year has been tough in the industry for everybody in our industry for that reason. You know what I mean? The discretionary income has shifted. And so it's been tough for a lot of aftermarket companies. And so trying to make sure that you stay relevant and that you offer a product the consumer can use or continues to want is key. You know, so wherever we can expand and collaborate and offer a better product at a better price and get our name in front of as many consumers and other vendors as we can, you know, we're all about doing that. So
I'd love to see one of the early companies in the aftermarket, to see your progression. Like, there's not many companies I could have on that started in 2001 and have been at the forefront of so many different, I think, kind of first group of upgrades people would do. Yeah. So to see it from the early days to now, what you mentioned with a hardware package that custom tuners can use, and all this information you can now access on a CTS3, and then being able to take that and say, we're going to redesign our comp box that was on the market for 20 years, and we're going to put this new technology into it. Yeah. That's really exciting, and I appreciate it. I know that the Edge product line is massive because you guys have been doing it for 20 years. There's so many different trucks and variations. if people want to go in, see their specific year, make, model, what's available to them, and ask you guys questions and reach out, is the best way to go on the Edge Products website and check it out?
Yeah. So the website is definitely the best place to start. You get right to our homepage. We've got a, shop by vehicle. You can fill out that year, make, model configurator, and it'll narrow it down to the products that are specific to your application. If there's specific questions that you can't seem to find or be able to locate on the website, we do have a great tech support team. You can reach out to them on the phone. We keep that phone staffed 8 to 5 during the week. We've got quite a few guys here in our Ogden location. We also have a location in Sanford, Florida. So our 8-hour days are actually 10 hours depending on the time zone. Anybody can reach out, check out the website, see what we offer for your different trucks. Like I said, we try and offer a different product for every platform at different price points, which means more or less features. It's trying to fit different budgets, different products, different power outputs, and different features. If it's a late model diesel truck that uses electronics, I'm almost certain we offer something for it, for sure.
Very cool. So, it was awesome to learn more about you, Jacob. I appreciate your time sharing your journey in the diesel industry, and then connecting the dots for me from my first experience with Edge, probably in 2005 or 6 as well, to now. And I'm really excited about what you guys have planned for next year, which is only a couple weeks away, so it's going to be here pretty fast. But I love the direction you guys are going and the way that you guys are approaching offering solutions to truck owners. So it's cool, really cool to chat with you.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. It is going to be a really good year for Edge. 2025, we've got some really good things coming, some new products coming down the pipeline that the engineers have been working on for quite some time now. So we'll have some big product launches this year, and we're looking forward to being out at some of the different events and getting in front of the consumers and continuing down the path. 25 years strong, and we're ready for another 25.
Don't forget, diesel fans, make sure and head on over to kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 40 TDP2024 for up to 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money, get some cool gear. If you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house, they've got you covered with different choices for blade steel, blade shape, opening mechanisms, different handle designs, and their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget. So we appreciate them offering that discount code just for Diesel Podcast listeners. So if you're in the market, use code 40 TDP 2024. I also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters: Tyler Loewen at 23 Diesel, CUTTERUP Rob, J Cole, Robert, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube podcast apps, follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 8 of the Diesel Podcast and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you want to hear in 2024. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.